Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for watching on the Town with Tanya. Please hit that share button if you can. I said I was never going to say that, and I did it. But here you go. Hit the button. You never know who's going to learn something. So today we are talking about DNA, genealogy, and what are some of the advantages of knowing about your DNA and knowing where you come from. So today with me here, we have someone who's very passionate. He's a genealogist, historian, educator, and historical scientist. He is a leading researcher for the Fulton County Reparations Task Force in Georgia, and he's a strong advocate for reparations, ancestral healing, and legacy planning. Please welcome Christopher Smothers. Hi.
Hello, it's so good to see you again, Tanya.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and check us out here on Town. Let's see. I want to know what to ask first. There's so much to go on this first. First of all, for my audience who may not know DNA, genealogy, can we all put that one word together or we have to separate it? Can you tell us the difference first? I'm going to do that first because there are people who have asked and they don't know the difference.
Okay, so genealogy and DNA are kind of married in a way. The two kind of work together to help expand our awareness about who we are, our communities, what we believe, our values, and who we descend from. So genealogy is the study of family history, communities, and culture. And DNA is a type of genetic evidence found in our saliva, our skin cells, and different parts of our body. So in today's society, with the advent of really smart technology, we're able to use DNA to extend what we understand about the genealogy and family history of different communities.
Nice. And you're a recent Atlanta graduate. How did you become interested in genealogy and Black history?
Genealogy, I think, is something I naturally went into when I was 12 years old. I went to New Orleans often, and that continued to be a reality for most of my childhood, is going back and forth between Atlanta and New Orleans, hearing stories about my grandmother's ancestry, her heritage, and really kind of piqued my interest about what was possible, and also made me question the things we didn't know. So naturally, as a kid, I was just really curious about understanding where we come from and kind of filling those gaps.
Nice. Yeah, that's there's so much, but that's a very young age. I think you're an old soul, is what they would say, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I've been told once or twice.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be at that age and want to know, be that curious. It's like most kids are like clueless.
Well, I think it's sort of just the feeling of, being the youngest, you have a natural curiosity because you feel like you missed out on so much. So
It's true.
I don't know, being immersed in a presence of like my elders and I being the youngest made me feel naturally inclined to, just want to know more about where I come from, what I missed out on, and that cultural legacy.
Wow. Yeah, no, I didn't find that get that curiosity till way later. But maybe I think I only got it because I was a foster youth. I think that's why I had it more than most people. Because some of my birth family didn't have. They were like, we never asked questions. Even when I talked to my grandmother on the Hogan side, she was like, we never asked questions. We just was told this is it and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everybody has their own introduction to those types of introspection questions that, are like very, who am I? Who do I come from? What am I made of? Is there anything that I have an acumen for that my ancestors may have, had a natural tendency to do or whatever? For me, I think just the natural distance, being kind of separated organically from my family and having to be intentional about kind of reassembling the heritage and that cultural oral legacy of like our family,
Right.
made me feel like a really strong connection to learning and remembering those stories because I didn't have them available to me every day. So
Right. Right. Wow. Well, what methods and resources do you use to trace ancestry?
there's so many. I think you have those organic methods like, oral history,
Mhm.
just that, that's this the lineage of conversation that happens, at family dinner tables, and then you have historical documentation
Right.
that is created usually by state, federal, local agencies that usually record life events. Right, so it's your vital records, your marriage licenses, your birth records, death records, things like that,
Mhm.
and after that, you have, your DNA, which is really more forensic in nature, and
Okay.
that's going to help you um, look at, from a genetic perspective, how you're related to all these people that took the Ancestry DNA test or a 23andMe DNA test,
Mm.
and that's going to help you start to kind of reassemble that um, genetic heritage and ancestry. Yeah.
Okay, so hi, I see you out there. I thank you. I see some of you log in. Thank you for logging in. We're here with Christopher Smothers, CEO and founder of Unearthing Your Roots. Please chime in and share. What tips could you give us to maybe start researching our own family history? Because a lot of people, whether foster kids, whether I have someone that wants to find their dad, they never knew their dad, many different things come up, health reasons. What would be some advice?
Yeah, there's no one way to approach this conversation, right? You
Mhm.
have people who have always kind of had this internal memory about family history, and then you have people who have no connection whatsoever to their biological families. There's no one correct way to approach this. Um, I think it's really on a case by case situation. And like if you're adopted or you don't know who your biological family is, I would definitely say use your biology to start to understand what's out there in the world. So take a DNA test, and with that DNA test, you can start to see, okay, here's my highest matches, here's my lowest matches. Here are common surnames when I look at my matches, family trees, and things like that. For people who are somewhat aware of their family, definitely start to ask questions that are relevant to what people remember. And, a good historical scientist or a good historian or genealogist or just a novice genealogist is really good at identifying those gaps in your family, legacy and heritage. So
Mm.
it's really important to ask questions that I don't know, inspire create curiosity
Right.
when it comes to um, interrogating family narratives because it can be so personal and it requires a level of empathy. But it's not as hard as people um, portray it to be when it
Mhm.
comes to asking those questions. But they can be sensitive because you never know what you're gonna trigger in someone else's memory, and so you
Yes.
always have to be sensitive to stuff like that.
Yes. Yes. And what you're going to find. um,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, I got people saying, like, even thanks to you, I found my brother and my four sisters. Thanks to you, I found my dad. I mean, I can't even tell you. My friend said thank you for helping her find her dad. And like, I think you did it in like 2 hours. It's like, what? I've been looking all my life.
Appreciate
It takes this guy 2 hours. I understand that because of what you do as a
it.
genealogist and historian and researcher, you have access to things that we might not quite have as much access to or easier access to, and
Yeah.
you know how to look. Very important. So you may have all the money in the world, but if you don't know how to, it's like being a detective, isn't it?
Oh,
To a certain,
yeah, for a while, I thought about being a private investigator,
you'll be good.
simply because I just felt like, okay, it'd be really cool to be able to, get paid to investigate different things and get acclimated with certain levels and agencies in government, and, um, then,
We,
I have really great mentors, so they really helped me understand that in a way I already am, and I don't need the PI title.
right.
It's just a access to databases and knowing how to work them.
Yes.
Um, so
You
that's
are. You're just a more tailored detective. genealogy,
Yeah, I'm a historical. That's why I call myself like a historical scientist, because
I
I
love
do feel like a historical, detective approach.
I love this. I love this. What are some of the, a lot of African Americans, we're funny about that, giving up the DNA stuff. But what are
Sure.
some of the challenges? And for me, it's more so because I noticed now they're starting to do it, but some of the sites did not, they didn't tell African Americans too much about their history. They just say, you're from Congo or
Mhm.
Benin or Togo. You're the main bases. That's what they tell you. And you're like,
Yeah,
okay, I already knew that part, but I need a breakdown. So now I know Igbo, I know what tribe,
yeah,
I know
different.
tribes now because I think enough of us expressed something about it. Maybe that's why they changed it, because it was, you could not find it. I had to go to 2 other sites to literally break down whatever that other stuff was and what Afrikaners that was. So what
Yeah.
do you think, what are some of the common challenges faced when researching African Americans in genealogy or anyone?
Sure. So the science of DNA is constantly evolving, right? So, when Ancestry first came out, they were kind of able to give you these regions, even 23andMe as well, able to give you these regions of where your DNA, derives from. And now we're moving into a space of DNA where even with, companies like African Ancestry DNA, where they're able to use your mitochondrial DNA or your mother's, DNA to identify a specific tribe and things like that. So,
Mhm.
DNA is the science behind DNA, the computers and the software that processes our raw DNA data is
Mhm.
shaping the way that we are able to connect to communities and tribes,
Okay.
in our ancestral home places. So, um,
Mm.
I feel that one of the most significant challenges is really making that connection from, indigeneity
Mhm.
to, I don't want to get too political,
Right.
indigeneity to how we see ourselves as Americans,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So um, there's a pretty good percentage of African American citizens of the U.S. In other countries surrounding the U.S. that are indigenous, descendants, Native American indigenous descendants, and then you have a good volume of people who whose ancestry comes directly from Africa, right? So one of the challenges in that experience, I mean, really is that we one um, combating the notion that this information is not available or
Mhm.
accessible. And in a lot of cases, records that pertain to Black and Brown people in America are in places that are that feel very hard to reach or inaccessible, especially for people who don't have the resources to access them. So I fully recognize that. I speak from a place of privilege when I talk about accessing resources, because I know that because of the nature of the work that I do, I'm able to go to courthouses and pull records out of courthouse repositories and basements and attics and all these different things to go into these records and pull them. That's that's a huge blessing, because I'm able to kind of form a relationship with the records. But that's why sites like Ancestry and Family Search exist, because the whole point is to really make records more accessible. And so I think we're constantly combating that inaccessibility and trying to make records that should be publicly accessible, that are of a certain age, like that still protect living people,
Right.
accessible. So I naturally combating that historical narrative, or the archival presumption that this information is only available to certain people.
Mhm.
Another pretty clear challenge is combating the wall of 1865. For a lot of people, it's not 18 is I'll say this like this. For a lot of people, just getting past the 1870 census is a challenge, right?
Mhm.
But if we examine the ancestors that we have been able to identify on the 1870 census, we realize that the people on the 1870 census were born before 1870. So in a
Mhm.
way, we have already been given the names of individuals who exist somewhere in documentation prior to 1870. So when it comes to depending on the status of their citizenship and the quality of life that they had prior to 1870, depending on the documentation that exists for individuals who were formerly enslaved, there's a unique methodology that you have to employ in order to access records that would help you contextualize and identify and locate them during a period of bondage or trafficking. So,
wow, it's amazing. I don't know how anybody wraps their head around the amount of information that you find and the way in which you find it. I think it's the coolest thing to be detective. That's what I call it. And so you basically answered the question I was going to ask. How has the field of genealogy evolved in terms of including representation, diverse voices, particularly African American culture?
Well, I'll still answer the question. Yeah. So I feel that we've come a long way and we have a lot further to go. Everything down from the average consumer to the professional societies and organizations that exist, I feel have slowly started to evolve in a space where now we are listening to the voices of Black and Brown people who are, who are endowed with a unique experience, a unique American experience, or a unique, melanated experience throughout the diaspora. And so those voices historically have not been published in the writings in the journals of these societies. So now we are creating a portfolio of evidence in our own experiences, and like as we perform this research, and in our own experiences, like as people, in this society. And so the awareness is definitely being elevated, and with the help of social media and the digital age, we're able to really viscerally experience and acknowledge the challenges that we face in being heard and also being considered when multi-billion-dollar genetic testing companies and conglomerates make decisions that impact an entire group of people. And so I do feel like there is more horizontal awareness around what challenges in the genealogy community we face, and also just people who are experiencing different challenges in their own disposition, pursuing their ancestry experience.
Okay. Wow. Are there any specific historical events or records that are particularly important for understanding African American genealogy?
Sure. So if your family was enslaved prior to 1865, they would be in property records. They were considered property, so they would be in property records of white people. So that's just very cut and dry. Those records involve transactions that detail the investment of property, the return on their investment, the insurance of their investment, and the interest and capital in the system of their investment. So the nature of researching African Americans prior to 1865 really forces people who are doing this research to confront the inhumanity in the nature of researching people who were oppressed and oppressed by people who felt justified in capitalizing and exploiting people's labor. And for me, someone who does this every day, I find myself having to numb myself in order to do this work effectively, because it's so emotional. And I feel like that's something that we, in order to do this work, sometimes have to do because we're trying to get to the information we want to learn and discover.
Right.
But at some point, we have to kind of reconcile the emotional baggage that our ancestors experienced and how we felt kind of unearthing this information documentation. That's something that is so personal to our experience as people and as people researching ancestry during that time period. So there is so much to kind of be unpacked in that relationship with the government and your ancestors. endorsing that, that bondage. And then even if you're a free person of color, this is something I'm learning with Fulton County, just because you're free doesn't mean that you are really free. You're really paying for your freedom annually via the tax records and digests and things like that.
Wow. Oh, I can't. I would be so overwhelmed. I know God called you to do this work because it takes a certain, like you said, you can process and bring it down. Okay, this is what I got to do. This is a must. I don't know if I could do it. That's why I never got into it. It interests me, but I don't think I have the guts and the courage that you have displayed. Because I'm a clairvoyant, so I see things. So if I am standing on the ground of an ancestor, I'm going to start weeping if something happened bad. I don't know what happens, but I feel everything. It doesn't matter, even if it's not just mine. It could be Mary from Italy. I don't care who it is. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
but I
right.
feel
But we need people like you, though, because y'all are the empaths. Y'all are the people who feel the reality of what has been experienced and what humans have experienced in that place, in that space. And that power to evoke an emotion, even if it wasn't directly inflicted upon you, is very tangible. It's something that we feel. And these stories really elevate as we start to dig through this very emotionally tied information. So yeah, we definitely need to get reconnected to that. So that way, this is the entrance to ancestral healing, right? So when you understand that relationship between your ancestors, what they experienced, how it impacted and transferred through generations of your family, and what you have unknowingly inherited.
Right.
I mean, I'm talking about everything down from the physical to the spiritual covenants that were formed before you even came into being. Just being elevated in the awareness of there may be things that are still affecting your family or affecting, even from a medical standpoint and perspective, that genetic counseling awareness of, okay, this is something that started with my great-great-great-grandmother, and it's been a pattern, so those are all indications that we should really be conscious of our own agency to heal and break and stop those generational curses and start new patterns and trends that really systematically reverse those things. And so that is, to me, elevating and empowering as a person who descends from people who were involuntarily oppressed.
Right. Well, so, and I think it also applies to if you were on the oppressor side, that if you're really trying to do the right thing and be a good person, you need to find out too, because then you can say, okay, that's what they did. How are we going to switch this trajectory? Are we going to be like them and carry this forward? Or are we going to make good on this and try to flip it, somehow? So to me, I mean, some of my friends say, well, what? I don't want to feel guilty. And it's like, there's nothing to feel guilty about if your generation is doing the right thing. You only feel guilty when you know you're not doing anything right and you're carrying on the same narrative that you know is wrong. That's when it becomes, like, okay, because I'm not going to carry on things that were not good for our generations, for my family, no matter what it is. It could be eating pork chops. I don't eat pork anymore. That's just me, because I just think that, and it's just a guess. But in my guess, for me, pork is not good for me. It may be for you. It's not good for me. So I don't carry that tradition. Someone else may say, well, I love my ham hocks and my whatever. Good for you. Have a ball. But some things you don't carry forward. Other things you do, but everyone needs to know that, I think, because you don't want to run from it, even if it's something that's bad and you're on the other side. In my opinion, there's no way for America to ever heal until everybody comes to the table and says, you know what? Yeah, so-and-so, or they did that, or whoever. So we're changing the trajectory as of today. Let's do this. But if you don't acknowledge it, you can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. You're stuck. You're stuck.
Well, you're
Because now
definitely
I
hitting
sound like
on a critical point, is just that imposter syndrome. It's like people feel that people get triggered when you start to kind of highlight, this is what, and some people, I'm not talking about any particular person right now. I'm just saying in general. Some people, even people of color, feel triggered by the acknowledgement of this is what your ancestor did.
Yes.
I'm saying whether they were in their right mind or not, this
Yes.
is what they did. This is what they enabled or allowed, and
Mhm.
were conditioned to accept.
Mm.
And so people personally feel attacked
Mm.
because in a way we understand that we are connected
Mm.
to the impact and the reality in our DNA, that
Mhm.
we are the latest version of our ancestors,
Mm.
say,
Mm.
and a previous version of ourselves may have
Yes.
done some really terrible things, but that does not. So acknowledgement, ownership, right? And then accountability is saying, okay, I'm willing to acknowledge this. Yes, this is my ancestor, not me.
Right.
Because nobody's perfect, right? Everybody makes mistakes. And,
Yeah.
and generations and societies of people, we're conditioned to think that things that now we can say, this was completely humanely unethical,
Right.
can now say that, this is wrong, and this is a crime against humanity, and
Yes.
we have a moral and social responsibility
Absolutely.
to correct and right those wrongs. So um, I think people who take that position are immature because they don't really consider the ramifications of how someone else can be having a totally different reality, and then they'll
Mm.
try and invalidate your reality, which is called gaslighting.
Mm.
Right?
Yes. Oh, we get that all the time.
Yeah, like it's
All
I'm
both
not
sides,
talking
but we
about
get
you.
it
I'm
a lot.
talking about something your ancestors did, and I'm not upset with you.
Right.
I'm really upset that my ancestors suffered because of what your ancestors did,
Right.
and now it's just when you understand all the other things outside of the physical, violence and the racial violence that was experienced, not just against Black people, Asian Americans, Irish Americans. Like this is
Right.
just
Italian.
a tradition in America,
Yes.
that the approach of foreign and foreign people
Mm.
has been to make them fit into the inferiority of the society while maintaining a legacy of white supremacy. So the
Right. I mean, they
the
did it in
notion,
Germany too. I mean,
exactly, and it's not a new thing, right?
no,
So
it's not.
um
It is repetitive, however.
yeah, exactly.
It's
So
insanity.
yeah.
Insanity. Keep doing it over and over again. It's when you go back and look at history, you're like, wait a minute, this is like the 500th time that we've done this. I don't know when we're going to get it, but either way. So how can you might have answered some of this? How can understanding African American genealogy help bring light on broader historical narratives and perspectives?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, this conversation, that question
Mhm.
makes me want to point this out. So, when you understand American history, you understand America is really not that old.
Right.
Um,
Not.
the average age of an empire is 250 years. How many years are we at in America? Do the math. So,
It's really scary to think about.
yeah. So, I mean, just when you think about the legacy of nations and the rise and fall of other nations, um, you know, the history of a people that form their own government is that someone's on the top and someone's on the bottom,
Mhm.
right? So when you think about the stratification of the isms, whether that's racism,
Mhm.
socialism, fascism,
Mhm.
colorism, all these
Mhm.
different things are formed in the base of a prism, a
Mhm.
three-dimensional object that is stratified in layers of superiority, what's on top, and inferiority, what's on bottom.
Mhm.
So when you understand the tie and patterns across nations of those different systems, whether it's class, race, gender, sex, whatever, economic status,
Right.
doing this research in genealogy and like historical research in general forces
Mhm.
you to examine what is the quality of life that a group of people experience in a nation.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you start to kind of expand those layers like an onion, right? And
Mhm.
you get an idea of why they've been placed in position in those places and what purpose they serve in current society.
Wow. That's that's a lot that we don't think about. What was
It's
it like for you? I saw you on television, Fulton County. What was it like being being an architect of the historical research and performing on the Fulton County Reparations Task Force?
wow. That's a loaded question. The the research that I've been leading with a team of two other talented data scientists has really been a blessing for me because too often you see projects that deal with reparations not in the hands of people who understand how to do this type of research. When we think
Right,
about reparations, people just want to throw out numbers and talk about what we want as a society.
right.
And we don't really know, like, they no, not we don't know, but people have not really practically attempted to quantify what is the value of labor lost. You
Right.
know, what can you measure in injustice? How much did the average white person who was close to the class that Black people were in made? You know, can we evaluate
Mm,
the compensation that they should have made had they been paid? You know, can we look at the revenue that states made in their commerce to sustain themselves? Can we look at what was taxed directly from the county to the state as a result of the enslaved labor that they were benefiting from the building of infrastructure in society's government to
mhm.
the privatization of labor exploitation for different raw goods and natural resources like cotton, sugarcane, and things like that.
Right.
So my role as leading researcher for the Fulton County Reparations Task Force has been so intimate because I'm starting to get the awareness around how that history continues to infect the decolonization
Mm,
of those systems in Fulton County and affect uh, the environment in which people who are descendant from slavery uh,
mm,
experience today, and why there continues to be a pattern of injustices felt in those communities
mm.
in the name of progress. Yeah.
Wow, well done. Because that's all the things that are needed to have this discussion. It's not just cut and dry. Give me the money and that's it.
It's
But
really not.
not
Honestly, it's really not. There's so many different levels
wow,
from the I don't even want to expose
wow.
people, but from major companies we understand today
Oh, I
and the
know.
families that
Mhm,
started those major companies, multi-billion-dollar companies,
mhm,
to the government's direct hiring out of labor uh, from enslaved, persons, and paying slave owners for that enslaved person's labor.
wow.
Every year. It's a very intentional
Yeah.
investment of local and state government and federal
Right.
government.
Well, I'm hoping one day they get it together sooner than not later because I figured if they have 90 billion for other places, then they should be able to certainly come up with our money somehow or another. Because
You would
I
think.
just some people I've had people and I've had Black people tell me, brown people, whatever you want to call them, I don't know what's appropriate anymore, tell me, oh, why are you talking about reparations? Why do you want reparations? And I said, if you don't understand, I don't have time to teach you. That's
Yeah.
my new answer. My new answer is I don't have time to teach you, and you need to do your research because I did mine. And then when you come back and talk to me, then we'll have the discussion. That's how I do it now because it's just it's exhausting. Number one, and number two, you didn't ask any other group that you gave money to. Why are you on reparations? Oh, what? You never asked those questions. No one's ever, not society, not government. No one's ever asked those questions. So don't come ask me those questions because then I'm going to tell you, go do your research and come back when you're ready. Because if you
Yeah.
don't understand that, we can't even talk. We don't even need to have a conversation, quite frankly. You know,
Well, nobody knows everything,
no,
right? And I feel like you're speaking to a large issue in this conversation is that sometimes we are our own enemy, and so many people of color who you who you know deserve to be included in this evaluation of who should be inheriting reparations are the main ones against it. You know, some people don't want it because they're still in that, like,
Uncle Ruckus.
yes, but
Sorry to
also just in that mental
that's okay.
enslavement of,
Yeah.
like, you know, I don't want anything. I don't want anybody to know who I am or where I'm at. I don't want anybody anything that like happen to me.
Right.
And then I don't want anything because I feel like, you know, they'll never give it to us, so we don't have hope for it.
Yeah.
And then I don't want anything because I feel like I don't want anybody to have more than what I have. It's very selfish, in my
Oh, it
opinion.
is. It's crazy.
Um,
Yeah. And that's on both sides. That I've heard that statement from both sides. And some don't even say it, but you can tell why they don't want it. It's because they're like, wait a minute, maybe Susie has a house next to, you know, whoever, Miss Jones. I don't know. I'm making up a name. And so that's weird to me. That's just weird to me. I want to see everybody winning. Every human being, I want to see winning. Because if they're winning, guess what? I'm winning. Because winners don't usually hang around losers, right? Losers like to pull winners down. So in that theory, I want everybody to be doing good. I've never thought of, well, why do you have this and I don't have that? That's just ridiculous. But people do think like that. And
yeah,
so
I mean, it's you know, if we don't understand who the enemy is, we'll do the work on behalf of the enemy. So we have to really do some introspection and position ourselves in a way that holds our politicians accountable. This needs to be something that we're discussing on a regular basis, and not just tabling the conversation, but like, what are the tangible steps that we're taking to at least perform a study and an assessment that fairly and thoroughly goes through the records to really ascertain okay, we know slavery happened, but like, how did slavery lay the infrastructure for this county, for this state? You know, and I personally think that that right now in Fulton County, we're laying a blueprint.
You are.
So that other counties across the country, especially those who had legal slavery in their borders, to be able to assess, okay, the county made this much money from revenue from raw goods every year. Okay, the county taxed this slave owner for each enslaved person that they had every single year. Here's how much they were taxed. And then, you know, this is the legacy of slavery after these slave owners died. Here's who this person was transferred to after their former owner died. And so we're trying, you know, California has, you know, already, you know, pushed for reparations and passed reparations legislation. Illinois has as well, and parts of New York have as well. So it's
Illinois, though,
we're
when you finish, remind me to tell you something about the Illinois one.
Okay. Yeah. But that was really everything I had in response to that question.
Okay. Well, no, that was great. Well, Illinois, I was going to say something about. If I'm not mistaken, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there the first Black bank, big bank, in Illinois? I want to say this new, it was two Black gentlemen. I don't have the story in front of me, but they have the Black bank, and the reparations. I forgot how much they gave to that bank, saying that they do fair practices to African Americans or something. I'm sorry, but what part did I miss of how is that a reparation for me? It sounds like the bank is going to benefit, which means that the government will benefit in the long run. Break it down.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't expect you to know everything, but
yeah, no. I saw it, and I know what you're referring to. Yes. So, the banks are going to be the custodians of money that I do feel like should go directly to people. And I think part of that is that I think part of the idea is that if we put money in these banks, and they'll be able to fund more Black people who want opportunities to like apply for loans in different cases and scenarios. So like if there's Bank of America did something similar last year by funding different minority-driven initiatives and grants, you know, by like dedicating, I think it was over $1 billion to just fund like different grants that, you know, small-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses wanted to do. In this case, it feels very similar. I know Illinois is also doing like a $20,000 voucher for people who want to buy a house and apply for mortgage. In addition to that, so there's a plethora of different ways to, do this, and there's no one right way, in my opinion.
But
But I
how?
do feel that. Mhm.
Sorry.
I do feel that there needs to be a public forum on what that community needs, because I do feel like when we, look at what form is going to be most impactful, it should be a public. Okay, we've done the research. We have led initiatives to, evaluate and assess, but like now we're turning it, and we should face towards the public. Once the government acknowledges, okay, yes, you guys are owed something, right? Here's the amount of money that we want to allocate for reparations in whatever form it is. That's, to me, when you turn towards the person that you violated and oppressed. This is when you ask them, okay, here's a list of ways. Okay, let's vote as a society. I bet people will be voting then. Let's vote as a society and ask ourselves,
we wanted to go to the community center.
What form of reparations? Exactly. What form of reparations do we want? What is going to be most impactful for us in our community? And that, to me, is only people who are in the state of not necessarily mental oppression, but just economic oppression, may be able to give voice to. I feel like they should be heard in that exercise.
Yes, and that's my problem with the whole way the banks are doing we'll give the business $5 billion. That's cute, but what about Jane's Pittman's great, did I say that right? Three greats, grandson, who is now still struggling because he has still not found his way, because his mother didn't find their way and his grandma didn't find their way, and they're still not finding their way. So what about them? They don't get nothing because they're not going to apply for a house. They don't have a small business. Not saying that maybe it should be a good inspiration. I don't know. I'm just saying it's not fair. It's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard of, because when you paid reparations for Germany and all the other places, Hiroshima and all the places, I didn't hear nobody say about, well, we're going to give you just, this. That's what we're going to give you. It was always money. Now, all of a sudden, nobody wants to talk about money to the actual victims. They want to give it as a whole blanket, which means, in my opinion, when they do this, now everybody's paying taxes on their money, which means what? Who gets money off of this money? The government. So it's a trickery, in my opinion.
Yeah. And in my opinion, it should be tax-free.
Exactly. Something.
Honestly.
Something. It doesn't make sense to me. It's another hustle, is what I'm saying. And that's just my words. That's not his, guys. Sorry. That's just me keeping it 100%. But I mean, go figure. Some people say, well, you should be happy you get anything. No, I will not be happy until you pay me the same thing you paid other victims, or more, actually, because it
needs to be equitable, right? I mean,
And I need land, by the way.
And I'm not one personally to ever compare a level of trauma, but I think there are differences, clear differences in the longevity of that trauma. And I personally hold the federal government accountable at the highest level. However, I was going to speak to the lack of financial literacy in our communities. Is why we don't know how to strategize, actualize, and organize.
Purposely, it's been passed down to us.
Exactly. And so that is another thing that we've inherited. So we have to start new patterns let me first of all just acknowledge there are people of color, usually people of color, who understand this really well and intimately. And they're like, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And I'm going to be the change in my community. I'm going to go ahead and do those workshops. And there are plenty of people, strong advocates and leaders, who are doing that work. And we love them for that.
Oh, yes. Plenty.
Absolutely. But we need to get to a place where we're reaching each other, because the average American citizen is so busy working, and I hate to say living paycheck to paycheck, but we're just trying to go from, surviving to thriving. And that is something that doesn't allow us the privilege to be able to sit in sessions in town halls and, general council meetings where the community can be heard. And which is why, even down to the planning of these meetings, there needs to be intentionality about where they can be accessed, where they're held, parking, Like
Yes.
everything needs to be really easy to come and participate in these sessions where we have these conversations, because people who work a 9 to 5 may not want to go through traffic to, to the session and have to pay for parking just to hear about reparations. So we definitely need to be more conscious about that. But going back to your original question, the Black community, specifically when we're talking about reparations for American chattel slavery, is, I feel, woefully underserved when it comes to the awareness of what is possible. The closest thing we know to reparations is a stimulus check.
That was the lowest in all of the other countries.
Exactly, but we know America can do it, right? It's just a matter of, are we willing to demand it? Because it's not going to happen passively.
No, absolutely not. It'll actually be blunt. You see, they're trying to delete history. I was like, wait, I can't talk about Dr. King in some parts of, where is it, Florida somewhere? I was like, you must be out your mind. That was my mama's friend. I'm going to talk about him when I feel like it. I mean, just the things that they're trying to ban is just ridiculous. But that's another story. That's why it's important to know who you are, so you can pass it to your kids orally, like we used to do. And in case the books get erased, it doesn't matter, because grandma told us what we were.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, can you share an interesting or surprising story that you have uncovered through your research of family histories? Anything great?
There's a lot.
I know. I was going to say, I know this answer.
I'll pull something from my personal research, though. I want to say last summer I went to Louisiana again to research my ancestors. And when I was there, I went to West Feliciana Parish Courthouse, and I was going through, I really went to pull a succession for one of the women who owned my ancestors. And when I was going through the paperwork, I was able to find the full list. That's something that I'm used to being able to do, is being able to go into property records, probate records, wills, and successions and things like that, and finding a list of all their property being evaluated. Usually they'll say their names and they'll give the valuation for that person. Okay. When I was going through a series of different books, I saw that in the back corner of this records room, they had stacked like binders, like old, like 19th century binders. That had, some of them had spines, some of them didn't. So I just started going through them just out of curiosity to see what was in the stack of records that I was looking at. Right. And when I started to look at each one, I started, okay, some of them were related to like criminal court, some of them related to civil court, some of them were related to like sheriff sales and auctions and things like that. And then I got to one that was kind of dismembered. It wasn't in any particular order. It was like 200 pages, but it was like it wasn't wide. It was very like compressed, and it didn't have all 200 pages. It started on like page 160 something, and it went up to like 220. But I opened it and I saw that it was a taxable property list. It didn't even have a name on it. I just opened it and something told me to open it, and it was a taxable property list for every single slave owner in the parish. Wow. And that's huge. One, because it was 1857. So it was like right before the Civil War started, but it wasn't. This is unique because we know that governments continue to assess taxes every year. We still pay taxes every year. Right. But you rarely see the tax commissioner's book on how they got those final numbers and how they were taxed every year. So so in this book, it listed the names of every single enslaved person that was owned by their slave owner, and not only the names of the enslaved people, but how many acres of corn, cotton, sugar cane that they were tilling on the land. Right. And then its value, and then like how many cows, sheep, horses, all of that stuff. It did basically a full inventory and assessment of each slave owner's property for the parish for 1857, 1858. And then I started,
irony is best.
Huh?
Irony at its best. Can you imagine keeping records of this? So like you can't even like get rid of it, get rid of the evidence because it's so
Literally,
you put it.
literally. I mean, the evidence lives at most of these courthouses, right? So when I was looking at the um, when I was looking at this document or this collection of papers, um, I stumbled upon my direct ancestors' names, and it was very emotional for me because this is the first and only document I had at that point had only like ever found to confirm that my direct ancestors were enslaved. And so when I started to unpack this, I started to look at who they were enslaved with, and I saw the name of their father, and I saw the name of his brother, and then I saw the names of the women who I assume one of them is their mother. I'm still trying to figure that out to this day.
Mhm.
But being able to confirm, okay, my ancestors were owned by Charles Percy of West Louisiana Parish, in 1857, helped me then create an entire methodology to really uncover how did my ancestors even become enslaved by this man that they were enslaved by in the
Mm,
1850s. And then
right.
I was able to pinpoint the transaction in the 1830s
No.
where they were sold to him, and
No.
then I was able to identify who sold them to him,
Mhm.
and then I was able to identify, like, okay, where they come from. When did they
Yeah.
come up the Mississippi River from Maryland, and all this other stuff. So
Wow.
that one document really unlocked a whole legacy of my family's bondage, right? But now I'm starting to kind of unpack genetically
Mhm.
why I'm matching certain people from certain areas. And now I'm
Right.
able to do like localized searches of surnames in those areas and start to
Right.
see, okay, well, this collection of people was enslaved. Who enslaved them before they were in Louisiana? And
Right.
so now I'm getting a fuller awareness. But that was a huge find for me because adjacent to that paper, I was able to find more ancestors that I knew in that community were enslaved. And then
Mhm.
just kind of really piece that all back together and find confirmation of the oral history that I have been
Right.
hearing for years.
That is amazing. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. No, my best one for me was finding my grandpa's siblings and the
Mhm,
pictures. Thanks to you, I'm friends with one of my, like, what would she be? She's my grandfather's niece. She's the last one left.
mhm,
She's in her 80s, but she sent me pictures of my grandfather's sisters, whom I never met. But they were so beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, she sent me a plethora of stuff that
mhm.
I would have never had access to had you not given me the first clue of what to do and, how to do it. And so thank you for that. Cause I mean,
You're
to
welcome.
me, it's like I'm a kid in heaven right now because as a former foster youth, you don't sometimes you may have not seen your family since you was like 5 or 4 or 7. It,
Mhm,
it depends, and that's a long time. And so you remember some things like I never forgot certain people's faces or certain things that you take a last minute photograph of. But there's other things that you don't know, and you may have heard your grandma say, but you're like, I don't know why they speak French, or I don't know why
right.
they do that. I don't know why. So it brings a puzzle together. And as a foster kid, I felt like an alien. So I felt like, oh my God, I'm not an alien. I'm actually a human being. So for me, that's what you unlock for me. So I don't know. I tell people, yeah, which is a question I'll ask you in a minute about that. People being paranoid about taking DNA tests. But to me, it was worth it because I'm looking for my brother still. And that's because of some stupid adoption law that's been so hard to find him. And he's the only person on earth that has not been able to be found by anyone so far. But
That's
it's a
tough.
challenge. It's gonna come. It's gonna come. I think God will reveal it to me. I'm gonna just be patient and breathe.
Mm,
But I think it's important to do it more so than not if you're looking for someone or if you're trying to find out something about your family,
mhm.
historical, and that's the only way
Right.
you can. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the only way you can find it with evidence. You
Mhm.
can find like people say, yeah, your Uncle Charlie used to wear the brim caps and smoke Marlboro cigarettes. You can say that, right? But and he died of such and such. But if you find the record that says on his death
Sure.
record, yeah, he died from smoking, blah blah, or whatever. I don't know what they would say. Then it makes it a little bit more like, oh, it's official. This is what it is. Oh, they lived in France, or they lived in Africa, they lived here, or
Mhm.
whatever. I love this stuff. I could go all day listening to a genealogist all day long because it's like you never know. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to find. Horoscope, 2000, whatever year that was. That's how I feel about ancestry and DNA and just the whole study of this thing is just amazing. How do you approach sensitive topics such as like slavery and segregation when you're researching African American genealogy or any genealogy for that matter? Because there's two sides to that coin.
I feel like every community at some point has experienced something really horrible, and it's so just something that you have to confront and you research and acknowledge and be prepared for. My parents grew up during Jim Crow, so
wow,
it's never really been far removed from my understanding. And slavery is even closer because my great grandparents are born there like in the 1890s, 1880s, my great grandparents. And some of us are not that far removed. And so it's really, I don't know. I kind of just accept it as a norm for me. I imagine for other people, it's really like this, jarring kind of reality. But I feel because of the effects of that history, we're still feeling that history very personally. And it's kind of like now, like moving towards the back, but it recycles every single time something traumatic happens to Black people in America.
Yes, it does. That's that part.
Yeah. So it's like we want to put it in the past, but y'all keep putting it in our present. So,
and especially when things are done, like we're just gonna erase all Black history. It's like what? Yeah. Wait, what did you say? How are you going to erase? So now you want to erase
that? There's so much, even down to the policy that is really disturbing, because we're talking about living people being erased from history.
That's what I'm saying.
Ruby Bridges is it's like 67. Ruby Bridges, the first person to integrate schools.
But here's the kicker. If you're going to do that, that's fine. But then you have to also do something else. You're going to have to erase the statue of the doctor who stands at, I forgot where he stands historically, the some statue of the first doctor who was practicing, the ABOR board, I don't know if I can say the word, on slaves with no anesthetics at wedding showers. This is what they're saying. Like, oh, we're going to have a wedding shower. Come on, I'm going to watch this right here. It's like, wait, what? So we need to erase that. While we're at it, we need to erase the lie about Christopher Columbus. There's like a lot. So we're going to erase. It's okay. Let's just erase all of it then. Let's just start over. I'm game.
Right. And on top of that, current attempt to erase history, like you still have like the document erasure too, right? So there's literal agencies of the government that were in existence and superintendents of those agencies whose mission it was to erase ethnic information, who wanted to redact information from certain vital records to keep people from understanding certain realities that their ancestor had experienced. And so
Hitler did that. He was a master at that. In fact, I'm just learning this when I did some other stuff, that he was the one that started the theory that we're not bright and we're made different and we're made, something's wrong with us type of thing. In truth, he knew a lot that is amazing actually about our DNA that we're just finding out, but he knew and reversed it. So there's a lot of that went on, a lot. Like, oh my God, something's wrong if you're melanated or, you're prone to more diseases. And it's like, no, those are the ones you made up for us, but we won't go there. Because we're really there's some things that we have that we don't even know how special it is because it was told opposite.
Right. And so combating that intentional, effort to keep people ignorant in the cycle is it's like a scientific experiment if you look at the macro level.
Yes, absolutely. And we're getting ready to wrap it up, but what advice would you give to someone looking to preserve and celebrate their heritage through genealogy research?
Yeah, so it goes right back to the oral, right? The oral, commitment to to share this information with family.
Mhm.
I'm getting into a place now with my own research where I have key documents that I
Mhm.
believe should be framed and like put on a wall. So it could be like just a physical, tangible reminder, not just a family tree. Like that's great. Nothing wrong with family trees on the walls and framing them. That's great. But that document that
Mm.
really shows, you know, it doesn't have to be slavery related. It could be, you know, your ancestors' immigration naturalization papers,
Right.
or you know, a document that shows the purchase that the land deed that your ancestor purchased back in the 1800s,
Mm.
or it could be, you know, the voter registration card from the 1940s, 50s. You know, so it doesn't just have to be slavery. You know, my ancestor was in bondage, even though
Right.
those are powerful mementos of, you
Right.
know, that legacy. But you know, really incorporating that history in the space that you live in as a
Mhm.
daily reminder of everything that it took for you to be here today. And
Mm.
like it just really creates an environment and culture in the family group that helps us remember that
Yes.
it's so much bigger than us, you
Yes.
know?
And have
And
gratitude.
exactly. And gratitude
Gratitude.
that,
Yes.
you
It
know,
makes you
is
want to go
over
higher.
time.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
I totally I get that. And as irony is best, but even as a foster child, I always the one thing that always got me through everything
Mhm.
was and that's probably because of my forever mom. She was she went to Hampton University, and she was a minister and blah blah blah, friends with Dr. King, civil rights leader, blah blah blah. So maybe that's where it was installed, but I'm trying to think, did I have it before that? No, I think she really hit it home. I just felt like somebody before me died so that I could be. So I
Mhm.
have to step up my game, even if it's just me being my regular self, going out my regular day and not reaching for the stars or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be that, but just being the
Right.
best human being that I can be, to pay homage to them in some way, because all of our ancestors sacrificed in some way. And
Right.
I teach children that too. Stop thinking about you. It's not about you.
Mhm.
You're just a small little microcosm of the whole picture.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think it's really easy because we live in this instant society, right? Where we want instant results, instant gratification, instant, you know, success, that we forget the process of performing a work and completing it,
mm,
and understanding that that process really did not come easy for different groups of people. And so, understanding that awareness, um, I think holds me accountable every day to like continue to push towards our goals,
right.
and helps me find my position and place in what I can do, what I feel like my gifts and talents are naturally leaning towards
Right.
to to create more love in the world in a way that is healing and cathartic to my family, the people I interact with on a professional level, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and on a spiritual sense as well.
It all goes together.
Mhm.
Do you have any active grants, projects that's going on now? If so, what is your role on them?
Yeah, so I'm working on a grant with the Division of Historic Preservation in Louisiana.
Oh,
It is in St. Charles Parish. I'm going through it's called Ancestral Heritage. I forget the official title, so
okay.
please forgive me. But
Mhm.
it's basically a grant that is surveying cemeteries that ancestral connections. That's it. I'm sorry. It's
Oh,
surveying historic African American burial grounds,
wow.
and burial grounds that are being threatened by environmental racism. So burial grounds that are are in Cancer Alley, or being threatened by like different engineering features of the Mississippi River. So many Black communities in particular are riddled with petrochemical companies that make billions and trillions of dollars a year producing chemicals to make gas. And
Yes.
so it just so happens that it's always in the Black community, and that there's always a cemetery that is now becoming inaccessible
Mm,
to the descendants of those people who are deceased. So
mm,
this grant is elevating that conversation, which has been happening. But it's not only elevating that conversation, but helping people connect to the people who basically labored their whole lives in those communities, and helping them reattach themselves to that legacy of, okay, here's my ancestors, here's where they lay now, even though they may have been enslaved in life, they don't have to be enslaved in death. And so we're creating a database to help people go into the interment information. If they were a part of a community of enslaved people, it'll tell you more about like where they were enslaved, what they may have endured, who they were enslaved by, how they became enslaved, and also their descendants, like the churches and the religious communities, and different recipes and things like that, kind of were recycled throughout the community, and also create a plan and strategy to protect those cemeteries, giving them historical designation, making sure that they are no longer going unnoticed, but are in the consciousness of people who are looking for ways to get involved in the community. So the end result is we want to have a QR code attached to a historical marker that talks about the people who are buried in those cemeteries throughout the period.
Well done. Brilliant. That is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Take advantage of modern technology.
You got to find ways to keep the youth involved and active, and we're moving towards that place. Even like headstones now, you're seeing QR codes attached to headstones, so you can see what that person, maybe a video of that person dancing. Now you can start to do stuff.
Wow, like really?
That. Yeah,
that's so amazing. Wow, I told you, thanks to you, I found my dad's literally his tombstone. Yeah, ironically, he's next to my mother over there somewhere in the military.
Yeah,
irony. Yeah, but thank you. It's because of you and you showing me little tricks that I was like, I know if there must be. Let's see, if they were in the military, I can go to the military site, and there should be up in the name and the year. I should be able to find something, and boom, there it was. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Imagine if I was really on it. So I know this is the last question because I know you got to go. And I appreciate you so much for taking the time. But I have to ask, so because of so much data breaches and, there was something going on with, I think it was 23andMe, was it the 23andMe? And then, we already know all the other sites have been done in a couple of times actually. But particularly DNA, people get worried and they get weary and they say, well, suppose, the police are going to frame me for the wrong murder. And they say the craziest thing, which is understandable. But from what I know, you can't just go in and say, give me so-and-so's DNA right now because I said so, because I'm the law. As of yet, that's not the case. Can you explain why it's greater to do it than not to do it?
Right. So this is such a nuanced conversation, right? Because with the evolution of DNA processing systems, we're able to use autosomal DNA evidence to connect people to their ancestors and also understand who descends from those ancestors in the same way. Even if you haven't taken a DNA test, you can make certain, connections to other people who are not in databases like that, because of the relationship in genetic science with those who have taken DNA tests. Yes. So that's a conversation in and of itself. The fear surrounding it is, I think, I feel that it is a real concern for a lot of people who are using third-party, genetic testing sites like GenMatch to further examine their DNA. Now there's a optional opt-in, opt-out that you can do to prevent your DNA from being used in studies like that. Just recently, I figured out. Well, I was contacted by a forensic company that told me that one of my great uncles, first or second cousins, was found, back in the 70s as like a missing John Doe, in Mississippi. And my great uncle, who's now deceased, matched him, and they wanted to get more information about this person who was in this database for people who had come up missing, and so. There's so many different layers to this that
that would have scared me. I would have been like, oh no, they're coming to get me. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, this was the the forensic genealogists who wanted to really identify potentially who this person was and then contact the family, because I'm assuming that the family knew that this person went missing.
Oh, so they were trying to find the family so they can notify them.
Find the family so that they could notify them, but also I confirm the identity of the person who was killed.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it's confidential, then this is just my thought. Why wouldn't they go through Ancestry, have Ancestry, whoever the site is, contact you and say, do you mind if blah, 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 right? Because suppose I'm like, I don't know what this is. No, I don't want nobody knowing we know they know it, but it just becomes, for me, it just becomes, what's the word? Creepy. While if I'm looking for a missing person, it's great because now I can have closure. So that's the beauty of it. There's a beauty and the beast to this.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a duality to it.
Yeah.
Most third-party sites like that, like JetMatch, when you upload your DNA to it, you get your list of genetic matches. Because the original intention of JetMatch was really to help people connect to other people who had taken autosomal DNA tests outside of Ancestry. So it was really like if you have 23andMe matches that you're not privy to, you can upload your DNA to JetMatch, and then you can connect with people who did not take their test with who you took your test with. So that was the original intention of JetMatch. And then they're like, use tools to kind of expand that conversation, like Chrome browsers and stuff like that. But when you do that, you are voluntarily, giving your name attached to the DNA test and your email, so that really ethically people who you connect to, like genetically, would be able to say, hey, cuz, we matched on JetMatch like they do on Ancestry.
Right.
The only difference is that with JetMatch, different organizations that submit DNA from cold cases can start to see, just like DNA is DNA. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Right.
So companies that use DNA to identify, persons in cold cases can start to again see who they relate to on those genetic sites. So that's really the difference, is that those genetic sites, those third-party genetic sites, can really be used to for several purposes. And there are nuances to this conversation, and I think that there are privacy things like two-step factor authentication that are now becoming a mainstay for these sites to prevent breaches and hacks and different things that are violations of privacy. So I think we're evolving into something that does really protect people, because there is valid concern.
Okay. I mean, for me, it was worth it because I was looking for a brother. So
for some people, they're willing to take the risk, and say, you know what, I need to figure out who my family is. And, even if I have somebody in my family that committed murder, maybe they need to be found out.
Right,
so
exactly.
Some people are willingly, some people are willingly protecting people who did some really heinous stuff in their family. And so those are personal, reflections to have. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, where can we find you before we wrap it up?
So I'm on social media. My page, Unearthing Your Roots, is live right now. I'm also on Instagram underneath My Ancestors Legacy.
My Ancestors. Let me see. That's on Instagram.
Yes. And then you have my URL at the bottom in the banner.
At that one. And what's the Instagram one?
My Ancestors Legacy.
My Ancestors Legacy. Okay, I think I spelled that right. There we go. It looks like, I hope that's right. Tell me if this is correct, guys, if you need to find. Okay. And you can always contact me, guys. You know that. We appreciate you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us today. We've learned a lot. And I know there's plenty more. We'll have to pick your brain another time on another area of this, because it's massive. It's massive.
It is huge.
And it's ever changing. Yeah. And ever changing. It changes. Like next week will be something different and new. So
absolutely.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, and congratulations on Simmons College. That's it, correct?
Thank you.
Yes.
Simmons University. Yeah.
Yes, because you're going to be studying your master's in science.
Yeah, so it's a dual program with a master's of history and a master's of library and information. Oh, sorry, a master's of science in library and information science, and I'm going to try and concentrate in cultural heritage informatics.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. And that's it, guys. That's it for today. We've been we went a little bit over time today because we came in a little bit later. But thank you for being with us. And we will see you soon, guys. All right, let me just refresh that. Give me a second.